Hi, friends. Hope you are doing well. I just got my hair cut, so that's why I'm wearing this hat. So forgive me for my informality, but I want to film a few videos for you on small groups and this sort of small group reboot that we are doing here at All Saints. Okay, so 3 videos. First video is going to be about why we do small groups at All Saints in the first place. The second is going to be about what small groups are. And the third then will be about sort of how the logistics of how small groups go down. Okay, so the first video is again why. And in this video, I really want to answer 2 questions. First of all, why we do small groups in the first place, but also why we have been talking about and envisioning this sort of reboot. Okay, so All Saints started in 2003. And as of April, this past April, we're now a church of over 1,200 members. That's a lot. God's been really kind to bring people to this church, into this place. And according to Tim Keller, this classifies All Saints as a, quote, large church. And one of the things that Tim Keller says in an article called Church Size Dynamics is that once a church gets larger and larger, and you have, he says, in a larger church, the more small groups you have per 100 people in attendance, the better cared for people are and the faster the church grows. So I'll read that one more time. He says in a larger church, so in other words, at All Saints, the more small groups you have per 100 people, the better cared for people are and the faster the church grows. So small groups then become a vehicle really for 2 things. They become a vehicle for care, for people feeling cared for. Then they also become a vehicle for growth, for the church growing. Moreover, he says this. He says, in the large church, the primary circle of belonging becomes the small group fellowship. And many of you have probably found this to be true, both for yourselves and for the communities and the fellowships you're leading. Right? In a church like All Saints, your small group became a small group perhaps that you're in as a participant. It became your main circle of belonging at All Saints. But now too, for you as a leader and the groups that you're leading, their main circle of belonging becomes the small group. So all told, in larger churches, small groups become the primary vehicle for pastoral care, for church growth, and then thirdly, for community and belonging. Okay, so one of the things that churches have to figure out as they grow is how they're going to organize smaller. How are they going to sort of to cut the pie or slice the pizza or whatever you want to say in order to care for everyone? And as Tim talks a lot about in our staff meetings, there are 2 primary ways that churches decide to organize smaller. Okay. The first way that they choose to attempt to organize smaller is the geographical approach. The geographical approach. And this is an approach that our plant, Grace and Peace, chose to do. They're in the city where there are all these very distinct sort of neighborhoods. What they decided to do with their small groups is to organize them geographically and to call them parish groups. And so, they have a Rosedale parish group, they have a North Loop parish group, they have a West Campus parish group, and so on and so forth. The other second primary way that churches can organize smaller is demographically. And this is what All Saints has chosen to do, in which you do not organize so much by place or parish as you do by age and stage. And that is why we have all the different demographics we have. We have the children's ministry and the youth ministry and the young adults ministry and the men's ministry and the women's ministry and the 50-plus ministry. And both ways, geographic and demographic, have distinct advantages and disadvantages. But primarily, All Saints has chosen to organize smaller demographically. And the same has been true of small groups. Small groups have primarily been organized through these demographics. So for me as a youth pastor, I lead somewhere between 2 and 3 small groups every semester for youth. Josh Keller leads small groups for young adults. Lauren Christian leads a young adults girls small group. Many of you lead 50 plus small groups, again, through the 50 plus ministry. And now in some of our ministries, there have been what I would call geographic within demographic. And we'll talk more about that later when we get into the how video. But again, demographic has sort of been the primary way we've chosen to organize smaller. And small groups then become a way to even organize smaller than that. So you have the whole church, you have demographic ministries, and then within those demographic ministries, you have the different small groups. And really, the big picture goal here is actually very simple. The big picture goal, the why of small groups, is this: every sheep a shepherd. That's the goal. The small groups are not just a vehicle for information download, right? Where you just study books together and sort of learn new information, as important as that information might be. And nor are they primarily places only to sort of share and vent about the things that are happening in your life, although that too is really, really important. All of those things, the information, the sharing, the vulnerability, is all encapsulated in this idea of shepherding. And we'll talk more later about what it means to really be a biblical shepherd and what pastors and church leaders mean when they talk about shepherding. But for now, the goal, the why of small groups at All Saints is so that even in a large church, no sheep would fall through the cracks and get lost in the shuffle. And that every sheep that God brings into our midst would have a shepherd. That is the why, and that's the heartbeat of small groups at All Saints. Okay? So the second thing I want to talk about now is why this reboot, or why this sort of new conversation about small groups at All Saints. All right? And the main reason why we're having a new conversation really is because of COVID, because of the coronavirus. Because, there's all sorts of speculation right now about how the coronavirus is going to change cities and how it's going to change cities like Austin. But I think that one of the ways it's going to change our city is that everyone is sort of just going to live smaller. They're going to be more geographically centralized in their neighborhoods and in their communities. They're not going to be in their cars as much. And secondly, as you know very well, COVID has just limited the ways in which we're able to gather larger. So again, I think we're going to see a movement from sort of large and spread out and in your cars to more centralized and localized and smaller. And so we believe that small groups are going to be a really integral vehicle for ministry, not just in the COVID era now, in which we can't gather larger in the same way, but also in the post-COVID era, in which people are likely going to gather in more localized and local settings. And again, this is a good reason and apologetic for, again, something we're going to talk about later, which is this idea of geographic within demographic. Okay? The second reason why we've been talking about small groups is in hopes of arriving at sort of a fixed or common vision for small groups. See, one of the things that can happen in a demographically oriented church is that all the different ministries can sort of become worlds of their own. The youth ministry can become a world of its own. The young adults ministry can become a world of its own. The 50-plus ministry can become a world of its own. And the same thing can happen with small groups, in which if you showed up to a youth small group at All Saints, it would look very, very different perhaps than a 50-plus small group at All Saints. And some of that is actually right and good and true, right? The way that we minister to and shepherd a 15-year-old student at Bowie High School is going to be very different than the way that someone ministers to and shepherds a 28-year-old who is working at Google or Apple or Facebook, or someone who is 65 and is retired and is here in Austin moved to Austin, say, to be with their grandkids, right? There's a proper contextualization for all these different demographic small groups. And yet, What we don't want to lose sight of is the common goal that we have as a church and our mission statement, right? To be the body of Christ in Austin for the world. That's our mission and that's our goal. RUF, Reformed University Fellowship, which is the college ministry of our denomination, one thing they talk a lot about is they say fixed theology, flexible methodology. And what they mean by that is RUF, as a member of the Presbyterian Church in America, has a fixed theology. They have a confession of faith, the Westminster Confession of Faith, which every RUF minister subscribes to and signs off on, right, and believes and trusts and hopes in as a faithful system of doctrine. And yet, how you do RUF at Brown or Cornell is going to be very different than the way you do RUF at Auburn or Ole Miss. And so there's a fixed theology, but there's a flexible methodology. And I would say with small groups at All Saints, we've got the flexible part down, right? I think we're very good as a church at being contextualizers and at doing small groups in different ways based on different contexts and ages and stages. But what I think we perhaps have lost sight of at times, or have not just articulated well, is this common vision and goal that we all have as a church to be the body of Christ in Austin for the world, and then therefore as small groups. And so we want we want to articulate a vision, a fixed vision of small groups at All Saints that unites all these different demographics and all these different small groups in a common vision and a common goal that is actually serving this overall mission of our church. So those are why me and others on staff have been thinking a lot about small groups here at All Saints. So why small groups at All Saints and why this conversation? Why small groups at All Saints? So every sheep will have a shepherd, even in a large, more than 1,200 person church. And why this reboot? Because we think our world is going to be becoming more smaller and more localized. And also, we want to develop a fixed vision that aligns our different demographic ministries and unites them around the common goal that we have as a church. Okay, that's why.